Everything you say will be recorded.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we're going to be getting started in just 2 minutes. We'll wait for everybody to come
I'll
in.
admit everybody.
The other Zoom thing that I do is I mute participants on entry. If you go under the participants and more, there's like a checkbox for that option.
Let's see.
I already did it, but
Oh, you already did it. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
In general, for people who are hosts.
Perfect.
Okay. The stream is working.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I am seemingly stymied in terms of downloading a single file from the GitHub, like just one of the notebooks. It lets me download the whole folder as a zip, but every time I try to download the one, it just makes me do it as a raw thing, and then I just get a tab full of text.
So the way to do this is not actually to download it via the web interface, but to git clone the repository and then pull updates. Git isn't really made to allow you to download individual files, but whole repositories.
I see.
So yeah, you should just look at follow the instructions in the README to clone the repository. That's kind of like the best solution. But if you in the meantime, you can just download the whole repository if you like.
All right, thank you.
Should we go ahead and start?
Sure.
Okay.
Looks like we have good attendance.
Looks like most people are here.
Yeah, Anna, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I think we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Introduction to Data Science. We just start our recording here. So I'm Anna Little. I'm one of your instructors for the course. Co-teaching it with me is Alexander Lex.
Hi, everyone.
So say hi, Alex. You'll be hearing from him soon. And today we're just going to start things off talking a little bit about what data science is, a little introduction to data science, and then taking some time to go over the course and the logistics. So, of course, we're doing all of this in a somewhat new format, all online. And if you have any questions coming up during the lecture, we encourage you to, you can ask questions. You can also write questions in the Slack, it's the lecture questions channel. So let me advance this here.
Yeah, so you can also raise your hand in Zoom, and then we will kind of get back to you as soon as we notice it. And we have a couple of people on this call, like multiple lecturers and TAs who will be on the lookout for any questions you might have.
Yeah, and that's great. And if I'm talking and I don't see something, maybe you guys can, Alex and the TAs can sort of monitor that and interrupt me to ask the questions. That would be great. Okay, and then just to let you know, so this video is recorded and all future Zoom lectures will be recorded. And so your voice in your video, if you participate in any of the discussions, will be in the videos, just so you know. If you don't want to participate in a way that is publicly visible, then please ask written questions, and that is another good way to participate. Note this does not apply to the breakout rooms, so if you're worried about that, we will be doing some breakout sessions, but those will not be in the recording. And if you have any concerns about this, just get in touch with us. Okay. Okay, we do encourage you to keep your cameras on. That gives us a little bit of a feeling of actually being together and seeing each other and actually having a sense of class. This is not required, so if you're not comfortable with that, that's okay. But we do strongly advise it, and especially when you're doing breakout rooms in a small group setting, it's really nice to see who you're talking to and get to know some of the other students. Okay, so I guess one of the main questions of the day, what is data science? Well, according to the Harvard Business Review, it's the sexiest job of the century. So you're in the right class, good for you. And there's lots of different interpretations of data science floating around Twitter. So one of them is a data scientist is a statistician who lives in San Francisco, or data science is statistics on a Mac. Or a data scientist is someone who is better at statistics than any software engineer and better at software engineering than any statistician. This last one is a little bit snarky, but it kind of gets at the point that data science is a very broad discipline, which is wonderful, but also means that it's hard to be an expert at every single skill involved. Data science salaries, as you can see from the little Glassdoor report, are quite lucrative, and there's really a growing job market in this area. So this is a really good time to be studying data science. And so sort of getting at how broad of a field this is just a big collection of words sort of describing various aspects of data science. So there's a lot of different components to this. I think one of the really key things about data science is learning from data. So we're dealing with data and we want to learn something useful from it. But this really, the ability to do that, the ability to really meaningfully learn from data involves a lot of different skills. And you can see here in this little Venn diagram, kind of three big pillars. So one is mathematical and statistical knowledge. One is computing skills or hacking skills. And then one is substantial domain expertise. So you can imagine, for example, if you're working with RNA data, it's not enough to just be good at computation and be good at math and statistics. You're also going to have to know all the intricacies of how that data was generated and the specific issues that arise in that application. But sort of in the intersection of all three of those skills, you see data science. And this is kind of a little cute graphic illustrating what happens when you leave one of them out. So math and stat combined with domain expertise gives you more traditional research that occurs at in a lot of academic settings. Without the domain expertise, you get machine learning. And then without the mathematical and statistical knowledge is where you really get into the danger zone, because then you sort of know enough to be dangerous, but yeah, you're not quite sure how to interpret your results. Okay, so according to Wikipedia, what is data science? Well, data science is an interdisciplinary field that uses scientific methods, processes, and algorithms and systems to extract knowledge and insights from many structural and unstructured data. And so you can sort of see in the little graphic the cycle of the real world generating raw data. The data is collected and processed and cleaned. This data feeds into statistical models and exploratory data analysis. But at the end of the day, if you really learn from this process and you learn from data, that affects the products that you build, that affects policy decisions that you put in place, and those actions have real implication on the real world, and then they sort of, in a cycle, create, impact new data that's collected in the future. So we sort of get this little loop cycle. So data science closes the circle from collecting real world data to processing and analyzing it to influence the real world again. And if you're thinking, well, this sounds a lot like statistics, this process of learning from data, what's the difference between data science and statistics? I encourage you to read one of the recommended readings for this week is 50 Years of Data Science by David Donahoe, and it's a really interesting article that goes into a lot of detail about both the similarities and the differences between these disciplines. And so I will say, yeah, kind of in a nutshell, statistics is very important for science, but he makes the point in the article that it's traditional statistics is not quite enough because a lot of it has been focused on making inference under very specific data models that real data doesn't tend to satisfy. And then in machine learning, there's much more of a focus on prediction instead of prediction for data under any assumption, not limited to certain generative models. And data science has sort of borrowed this emphasis on prediction and on and sort of making the discipline a bit more of an empirical science where you have an evidence-based testing approach. So so anyway, check that out if you have time. It is quite interesting, especially as we're starting the course and thinking about what it is that we are learning. Okay, so another what is data science interpretation, this one from Hal Varian, Google's chief economist, the ability to take data, to be able to understand it, to process it, to extract value from it, to visualize it, to communicate it. That's going to be a hugely important skill in the next decades because now we really do have essentially free and ubiquitous data. Okay, so there's lots of different components to this: understanding it, processing it, extracting value, visualizing, communicating. I really like the extracting value part because I think that kind of really gets at the goal. But indeed, it takes a very broad skill set to be able to do all of those things well. Okay, so why do we care about data science? Well, we care because data is truly everywhere these days, almost everywhere we look. So biology, it's data-centered and computational. Physics, data-centered and computational. Medicine, data-centered and computational. Social sciences, the same. Business, the same. So we just really see data all around us in very diverse disciplines. And why do we care? And potentially, why do you care as young people pursuing your degrees? Well, lots of jobs. So there's been, a real growth of employers looking to hire data scientists or even just people with data science skills. This is reflected in CS enrollments, which have been really exploding both for majors and non-majors. And according to the recent Rebooting Jobs report from Burning Glass and Oracle Academy, they noted that CS skills are the most rapidly growing skills requested in job ads. But most of those job ads did not require you to have a CS degree. Only 18% of them did. So there's sort of this, this focus on finding and hiring people with computational skills, but not requiring them to be computer scientists, just requiring them to be proficient at working with data and the basic computational skills they would need to do that. Okay, so we've really entered the era of data. And in 2010, there's approximately 1,200 exabytes of largely unstructured data. Now, if you're not familiar with an exabyte is a billion gigabytes. So that is a lot of data. Google stores about 10 exabytes a day, and the hard disk industry ships about 8 exabytes a year. And there's about 2.5 exabytes of data generated every day in 2012, and it's only increased since then. And so if you do a quick Google search, for example, if you Google YouTube cat videos, it's really mind-blowing how much data is stored online. You get almost 600 million results, and these search results are generated in less than half a second. So the quantity of this data and the speed at which it is accessed is really quite remarkable. Okay, so living in the era of big data, how can we leverage data? I guess in our personal and professional lives, we really use data for a lot of things. So you can improve your fitness by targeted training. You can improve your product by targeting your audience and considering semantics. Make better decisions. So of course, we use data a lot when making our decisions. What diagnosis does a patient have? What's the right medication for them? And seemingly unimportant things, but that are yet kind of important in the moment, picking a good restaurant, a good hotel, etc. And also very important for leveraging data is making predictions. So not just making better decisions, but predicting what's going to happen in the future, be that an election, an event, crowd behavior, etc. Okay, so this is just a little personal example of how do I use data in my personal life. Well, I just moved to Salt Lake City. I'll sort of do a little bio later, but mainly I was in Michigan for the last 3 years. And so we bought a house and of course used Zillow among other things. But we have all of these applications these days that really take, host an enormous amount of data about pricing and interest rates and schools, and really pull together many different data sources. And this has a real effect on our decisions and our lives. And of course, moving somewhere new, you'd be very lost without your navigation system. And that just in and of itself is an enormous amount of data to store. Okay. And my little Run Tracker app, of course, keeps track of all of my fitness data, although this is not my personal, this one I just got a screenshot off of the website, but has a helpful impact on my life. Okay, so, and kind of beyond how data affects us personally, big data is really transforming science and engineering and really changing how these sciences are done. So cheap sensors have really changed the way that science and engineering are done. And there are lots of other examples too that arise in large physics experiments. Cheaper and automated genome sequencing has really revolutionized smart buildings and cities and geophysical imaging. And this has somewhat led to a controversy about hypothesis or data-driven methods. So what do I mean by this? A hypothesis method is where you really kind of formulate a hypothesis, an idea of what is causing something in the data. For a data-driven method, you're just learning from it, but you're not really forcing a certain structure on the data. And data-driven methods are generally very, very powerful for making prediction, but sometimes come at the cost of not understanding exactly why or what the generating mechanism is. So there's a bit of debate on whether data-driven methods are sufficient or whether we still really need hypothesis methods that get more at the why. Okay. Okay, so and then a couple more specific examples of this big data era in science and engineering. So one of them is the CERN Large Hadron Collider data. And CERN has publicly released over 300 terabytes of data, which is a lot. So just to put that in context, if that would be about 20,000 Gmail accounts, if each Gmail account was about 15 gigabytes of data, and it would be about 12 million emails. So all of this from CERN. And another equivalent, oh, I'm so sorry. Hold on. Okay, I'll try not to do that again. Another equivalent would be 63,000 DVD-Rs or 6,000 Blu-ray discs. Or if you were going to take that same amount of data and you were just going to live stream it on Pandora, it would take over 1,200 years to get through all of that data. So it's really mind-boggling. And yet it's still small compared to the amount of data that the National Security Agency works with. Going by some figures from 2013 that the agency released, the NSA's various activities touch about 300 terabytes of data every 15 minutes. Okay. And then another very different but very important application is genomics. And so just to give you an idea, one of the main databases for genomic data is TCGA, which is the Cancer Genome Atlas. And this database is about a petabyte of data. So a petabyte being less than an exabyte, so that's about 1 million gigabytes, but still huge. And the amount of genomic data that's being generated is really growing at a staggering rate. So here's a little quote that I found kind of fascinating. As a single human genome takes up 100 gigabytes of storage space and more genomes are sequenced, storage needs will grow from gigabytes to petabytes to exabytes. By 2025, an estimated 40 exabytes of storage capacity will be required for human genomic data, just for genomic data. Okay, so well, with this sort of deluge of large data sets, if you want to keep them, you have to have somewhere to put them. So this has also caused sort of an increase in the building of data science centers and storage capacities. So one of them worth noting is the NSA Utah Data Center, which is close to Bluffdale, and I believe was opened pretty recently, constructed back in 2019, I think. And so the exact storage capacity of this huge facility is debated because they have not made that information public. But NPR estimates that the center will be able to handle 5 zettabytes of data, a zettabyte being 1 trillion gigabytes. So that's, yes, a lot of data to deal with. Okay, now we can't actually work with that data. We won't work with that data in this class. Where can you find data? The good news is there's lots of data that is publicly available. You probably already have access to a lot of the data that you might be interested in, whether you've maybe realized that or not. And if not, to kind of get you started looking at data and thinking about maybe some of the data you might want to use for your course projects, which Alex will tell you more about. If you go to the course website, you'll see a list of data sources. So these are a lot of different websites where you can get publicly available data, the UCI Machine Learning Repository, CDC, there's a lot of different stuff on there, census data. So you can kind of poke around and see climate data, what sparks your interest. Okay, so that's kind of our introduction to data science. Hopefully we have succeeded in motivating you that this is a thing worth studying, and we will spend most of the rest of the time going into the course logistics and discussing the course goals and logistics in more detail. So let me sort of at a high level say sort of the main focus of the course is for you to acquire the basic skills that you need for each step of the data science process. And this includes data wrangling. So this can potentially be the most frustrating part if you're not used to it. Acquiring the data, cleaning the data, reshaping the data, sampling the data. And then also data exploration and analysis. So get a feeling for what the data set is, describe the data set. There's some kind of basic statistics that come in here, and also, a lot of computational skills, and then prediction. So inferences and decisions based on the data. And then another really important part will be communication. And so this will be emphasized in your projects as well. So after you sort of do this process, you wrangle the data, you explore the data, you make predictions, etc. How do you communicate your results in an effective way? Okay, and here are some of the topics that we're going to be focusing on. So programming, version control, data wrangling, data acquisition, basic statistics and hypothesis testing, visualization, regression, classification, logistic regression, KNN, classifiers, SVM, decision trees, neural networks. I guess I'll let you read this slide because I don't want to just read it to you, but I will say clustering and dimensionality reduction, because those are some of my favorite topics. Lot of really interesting topics here. So if you're reading through this and you're familiar with some of these things, this may seem, like quite an ambitious list of topics to cover, but we will, do our best to really make this accessible. We're not assuming that you're an expert sort of either in statistics or in computation. And I will say, well, hold on, I guess we'll get into that. I'll be doing more of the lectures on the statistics side, and Alex will be doing more of the lectures on the programming and computational side, as I'm in the math department and he's in the CS department. Okay, so who is CS 5360 or Math 4100? So we're just gonna give you a little introduction to your instructors and your TAs, and then Alex will take over for the rest of the lecture. So my name is Anna Little, like I said in the beginning, and I am a professor in the mathematics department. Actually, I just joined the University of Utah 1st of January, so I'm new to the university, but really enjoying it so far. Before coming to Utah, I was a postdoc in the computational mathematics, science, and engineering department at Michigan State University. I was there about 3 years, and I have my PhD in math from Duke. And if you're curious and learning a little more about my research interests, etc., you can check out my website. And I'll just give you just a really brief overview of my research focus, as it is relevant to data science, in case you're interested. And if you are, of course, happy to chat more about that. But I'm very interested in a number of different topics, many of which center around sort of the mathematics of data science. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is data analysis, dimension reduction, and estimation. So given a very high dimensional data set, you may have a data set with 20,000 features, or even 1 million features, who knows, really, really big. How can you visualize it? How can you represent it in a small number of dimensions in a meaningful way? There's various algorithms out there for doing that. pros and cons of all of them, but a very interesting question to think about. I'm also interested in clustering and notions of similarity. So this idea that given a data set, we want to partition it into meaningful groups. How do you do that? How do you say that two data points are similar? What's a meaningful notion of similarity? As you can kind of see in this data set here on the left, this is sort of an easy data set, and the similarity between data points is pretty correlated with their Euclidean distance, but this is not always the case. For example, if you have a data set here on the right, you can sort of see a natural clustering structure that doesn't have much to do with the Euclidean distance. So how do you define notions of similarity in that case? So I'm interested, I guess, in a lot in graph-based methods. So starting with the data set, constructing a graph on that data set, and then using methods which really leverage that graph structure, thinking about what are the best ways to cut that graph, and also how can you do fast computations on that graph? How can you make the graph as sparse as possible in order to speed things up? And then another area of interest is in the area of signal processing, and specifically in multi-reference alignment. This is where you have a hidden signal, such as the blue curve over here, and you randomly translate. The signal is randomly translated, possibly randomly dilated, and then subject to a huge amount of noise. So this is basically the problem of having a large amount of really noisy data and wanting to come up with a procedure for taking a large sample size of really noisy objects and reconstructing a high resolution reproduction of the hidden signal, which is kind of a toy model for a lot of interesting problems in cryo-EM and other application areas. Okay, I think that concludes my portion, and I will hand it over to Alex. So it's a wonderful virtually meeting everyone, and I'll let Alex take it from here.
Okay, I'm assuming you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Anna, for getting this lecture started. So yeah, I'm an associate professor in computer science. I've been here now for 6 years at the University of Utah. I've also taught this class a couple of times. Before joining the University of Utah, I was a postdoc at Harvard, and I have a PhD in computer science from Graz University of Technology, which is in Austria, which is also where I'm from. And so you see like a picture that I took on a hike back home. And you can see that like I'm coming from a mountainous place and moved to a mountainous place. So I really enjoy that part of Utah a lot. Here's my contact information. You can also look at my personal website if you want to learn more about any of this. I co-direct a visualization design lab together with Mariah Meyer. This is like the last picture we took pre-COVID, which we took when one of my PhD students was just graduating. And so we are a group of people, most of us computer scientists, who are kind of like interested in developing visualization methods, very frequently applied to, let's say, biology. So I would say my interests are data visualization, bioinformatics, human-computer interaction, and I also work a little bit in data wrangling. One example of a recent project that I found very exciting is like looking at clinical genealogy. So you all might have heard of this like amazing resource we have in Utah, the Utah Population Database, which is based on like the LDS Church genealogy records, enriched with lots of clinical information. And we have this unique resource, and we can use that to study very complex diseases or conditions, for example, cancer, or in this case, we were looking at suicide. And so the question we try to answer in this particular project is, can we kind of learn anything about whether somebody who committed suicide, whether this was kind of like mostly genetic or mostly environmental or social or anything like that? And so we built this tool to, together with collaborators in the Department of Psychiatry, to let them explore like these very large family pedigrees that go back a couple of 100 years with like hundreds of members and many suicide cases. And so they use a tool like this to kind of like triage their data and identify cases that are interesting to like look at in more detail at the genetics and look at shared genetic sequences and so on. Generally, like one big research area of mine is large, multivariate, and often biological networks, be it like metabolic pathways, signaling pathway, brain networks, or also social networks, anything like that. We also have a big NSF-funded grant that investigates exactly this area. And then I also work a lot in multidimensional data analysis and visualization. So things like set data or ranking data, basically anything that is a table. How can you visualize this, especially if it's kind of like large and a little bit more complicated. And as I already mentioned, I do work a lot in biological applications. So for example, in genomic data analysis, on the bottom left, there's a tool that we developed to work to identify cancer subtypes. So if you, for example, think glioma, brain cancer, there's not just one type of glioma. There's actually multiply clinically significant subtypes of glioma. And you kind of like, for example, use clustering to get an hypothesis of what these subtypes could be, but then you use visualization to kind of like develop a better understanding of these subtypes. So for example, what's the effect on certain signaling pathways? What is the correlation with individual abnormalities in important genes like EGFR? What are the clinical outcomes for these different things? And the top right here is a visualization where we looked at alternative splicing. I'm not going to go into detail here. And then one of my most dominant research areas recently is about reproducibility, storytelling, annotation, and integration in computational workflows. And so I think of interactive data visualization as this amazing tool that we can use in the discovery process, but very often it is kind of like divorced from, for example, your hacking in a Jupyter notebook. And if you use visualization, you kind of like suddenly forget what you did because there's no good record of it. And so my group and I, we've been building tools to keep a record of things that you saw, things that you did in a visualization tool, things that you found interesting, and also try to infer kind of like, what were you thinking? What were you planning? Adding annotations. And you can use this for reproducibility, which is of course super important in science, but you can also use it for storytelling, for example. So this gives you a rough overview of roughly my research interests. And next, I want to introduce our three amazing teaching assistants, Daniel, Devin, and Shaurya, and I'm just going to hand it over to them to briefly say hi themselves. Daniel, do you want to start?
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm a first-year math PhD student. I'll be studying or researching the mathematics of sea ice and its effect on climate change. That's in the future. I'm originally from California, and I'm in Salt Lake City now. And as you can see, I'm actually in space right now. But I'm looking forward to working with you all. I think this stuff's really interesting, so I think it should be fun. Okay. So I guess we'll go to Devin.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm Devin. I'm a second-year PhD student. Before I moved to Utah, I lived in Minnesota and Wisconsin, so I did not move from mountains to mountains. Moved from very flat and cold to mountains and less cold. So it's been pretty fun here. My main research project is related to cell growth and visualizing that, and how those cells grow under different cancer medications. But yeah, I'm excited to be here for a new virtual semester and to be a TA for this class. Shaurya?
Hi, thanks, Devin. Hi, I am Shaurya, and I'm a graduate student in the master's program in computer science, and this is my last semester here at the university. I'm also working with Alex on a project this semester, and yeah, I'm excited to be here and be working with you all, and I'm looking forward to helping you all and learning some in the process myself.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Let me see. So I want to take the rest of the time we have today, and we might end a little bit early, I want to take the rest of the time to talk about the course structure and also answer any questions that you might have. So the central point of information, like probably most of the questions that you might ask are answered on the datasciencecourse.net website. There's like the homepage, the syllabus. So I really want to encourage everyone to like definitely at least skim, if not fully read the syllabus, because it's kind of like important. There's a lot of things in there that you should know about this class. And so, yeah, this is kind of like your main source of information. Then we also have a lot of information about the project on the website. But for now, you don't have to worry about this too much. We'll have like a dedicated session on introducing the project, how it exactly works, and so on. But what you also want to look at is the schedule page. The schedule page is where like we list exactly which topic is covered in which week. And you also have like a Google Calendar built in where you see all of our office hours and also the Zoom links to them. And then finally, there's the Hall of Fame where you see best projects of last year's and resources, data sets, or tutorials or anything like that. We are using kind of like a lot of different tools in this class. We're kind of like trying to do using the best tools for the jobs rather than do everything with Canvas. I personally, for example, prefer Slack communication much to Canvas messages. And so that's why we have the Slack team. And so everybody needs to be signed into the Slack team because this is the formal way that we will be communicating. Especially you need to listen to the announce channel. So everything that is relevant for the class will be posted in the announce channel. And it's also a way for you to ask questions if you have issues with homework or anything like that. We will use Canvas, the standard Canvas of the University of Utah, for all of your submission needs and for all of your grades. So every time you do a homework, a project, or anything like that, you will submit it into a Dropbox on Canvas, and then you will receive your grade through Canvas, and you should have a very good idea of where you stand in the class based on that. And then we'll be releasing all of our materials, like the homeworks and the lectures and so on, via GitHub. And we're doing this mostly also because we want you to get used to work with a tool like GitHub, like version control. Because if you like, as we talked, as Anna talked about, it is about bringing in some software engineering into the whole process. And part of software engineering is, of course, using version control. And so we'll introduce Git and GitHub in a lecture on Thursday. But in the meantime, for today, you can just download the slides if you just download the whole repository or follow anything that you saw in the README. We also, everybody on our staff team will be holding office hours. So you can see the calendar on the website for when the office hours are. You also have an opportunity to briefly chat with us on after class. We'll turn off the recording, and then you have an opportunity to like talk for 5 minutes or something like that. And we try to like space out the office hours so that you can find a slot across like at every day of the week, except maybe Monday, because homework is always going to be due on Friday. And so you'll have an opportunity to get help in an office hour or to get help on Slack. We'll be announcing a couple of procedures of how exactly we'll be doing office hours, but likely we'll do like a 20-minute session or so for general questions with everybody. And then we might go into a closed session where we'll enable a waiting room and have kind of like a tool to manage like sequences of students asking questions. But we'll figure this out once we have the first real homeworks coming up. And then if you should use email if you need something from us specifically. So for example, if you're sick and need an extension for homework, you shouldn't use Slack, but you should write the contact@datasciencecourse.net email address. This goes to all of the course staff, like Anna, the TAs, and me. And so this is the way to reach us if you have anything that is personal. For everything else, you should use a public question, for example, on any of the Slack channels. So if you have a question about, hey, how does this work in the homework, you shouldn't email us, but you should write it in a public Slack channel. And any questions so far about any of this? So The course will have a couple of components. The main thing that you will be interacting with us is lectures. We introduce the theory, and we will kind of like introduce coding as well. We will have short hands-on coding exercises and longer in-depth coding examples. Except for today and a few select lectures, we will actually not be using slides, but we'll be teaching directly out of Jupyter Notebooks. So you will be kind of like seeing us run through live examples most of the time. Sometimes it will be some kind of whiteboard notes, and occasionally it will be slides, but I'm guessing that like 18 out of 25 lectures will be out of Jupyter Notebooks. Our lectures will be strongly related to the homework assignments. So if you pay attention to the lectures and if you do the exercises in the lectures, you'll have a much easier time doing the homework. So we definitely encourage that you attend lecture and participate in these little activities. And then this is not a theoretical course, right? We are introducing a lot of different things in a very practical way. We'll be using libraries, and then you can actually run, for example, various classification methods on your own data. You might not have like the complete handle on exactly what is happening theoretically. You should have a good idea, but it's meant to be like practical. So if you, for example, a geology PhD student, you might find that some of the skills will apply also to your research. And then we have a final project. So the homeworks are kind of controlled. And in the final project, we give you a chance to go through this complete data science process, to acquire the data yourself, to clean it yourself, to do some prediction, some analysis, some visualization. And so this is kind of like the most important component as far as grading is concerned. We have a couple of things that are, of course, different this year because we are in this difficult and weird situation that we're in with being in quarantine and not having in-person classes. So this will be an online lecture, as you are painfully aware. Also, the university doesn't have an official spring break this year, so we started 1 week later. But the CS department kind of like follows a Senate resolution to kind of like not teach during the week that usually would be spring break. So there will not be a class on March 9th and March 11th. And there will be like a 2-week period to complete a 1-week homework. So the homework will be due March 12th, which is technically in that week, but it's just like basically you could also do it and submit it the Friday before. So we really want you to have a week where you can like take a breather, relax a little bit, and not be stressed out about courses all that much. We also, compared to when we taught this class before, to kind of like also acknowledge that it's a stressful time for everybody, we added a drop option to a homework. So your homework with the lowest grade will be automatically dropped. Now, I would very, very strongly recommend that you like do not use that option for any of the first 3 or 4 homeworks. Because like if you miss the first 3 or 4 homeworks, you will like fall behind, especially the first 2. Like, okay, if you're like no Python by heart and you don't want to do homework 1, it's going to be very easy for you. So it wouldn't be smart, but it wouldn't be an issue. But if you don't know how to program all that well, you should definitely do the first couple of homeworks. But strictly speaking, you could also drop those. Also, there's been the Senate resolution going around to like inform you that you also have an option of taking a class for credit, non-credit designation. That depends a lot on whether this actually makes sense for you on your program. So you can use CR&C designation for general education credit. You couldn't use it for CS credit. I'm not sure exactly about whether you could use the math version of this class for computational credit with CR&C. I'm assuming not, but if kind of like you're worried about your grade and you're taking this class more of kind of an interest and not as part of your mandatory degree program, CR&C might be an option for you. And then also, please, we know that this is a difficult time for everybody. So do get in touch with us if you're sick, if you have COVID or any other like health problem, if you're falling behind due to responsibilities like childcare or caring for somebody who has COVID. We will be like very generous with extensions and accommodations for any of those things. And then for like going forward for all of the lectures, we'll introduce like a 5-minute bio break. We won't be doing this today because we are probably not going to use the whole time. But going forward, we'll be doing like a 5-minute break in the middle. We'll all turn off our video, quickly take a breather, and then continue with the lecture. So some of you might wonder, like, what do I have to do to do well in this class? These are the different things that you can do to get graded in this class. So homework assignments will be like 45% of your grade. I don't think we'll actually vary the value this year, so maybe this is out of date. But one thing that I really want to encourage here, the homework assignments, like, do start early. We typically release a homework on Friday, and then you have a week to complete it by the next Friday. And it is really a bad idea to start your homework on Thursday, right? Start it like on Saturday or on Monday to make sure that you have time to get help if you're stuck, because you have office hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And so if you started in time, you will be able to get help. But if you started Friday morning, you might not be able to get adequate help anymore. We also have like a no questions asked late day policy, which comes with a penalty. So if you can't submit it on Friday, but you don't really have a good medical reason or anything like that for a late submission, you can submit it on Saturday or on Sunday, but you lose 1 of 10 points for every day. But this is no question asked, and we will not be kind of strict about this, right? If you submit at midnight and 15 minutes, we will not count this as a late day. But if you submit at 2 p.m. the next day, you will lose 1 point.
We do have one question from Slack.
Sure. Can you read it to me? I don't have it open.
Yep. Is the homework related to the lectures from the previous week?
Yes. So it's always, we will cover everything by the Friday we release the homework. The only exception is the 2-week break for spring break. Here we just couldn't fit it in the schedule, so there we will only cover everything on that homework on the Thursday before. 90% of the time, yes, you will always have at least 7 days between when we cover something and when we ask it on the homeworks. Okay, so the most significant part of your grade will be your final project. The final project will be in teams. It will be split in, like, you have to propose something, and then there will be 2 milestones. So you submit kind of like a preliminary version of your project first, and then you get feedback from us. You will be also assigned a mentor, one of our core staff, to help you with your project, to be your point person. And then, like, the final project, of course, is the most important piece. The final project also includes like a short screen capture or a video of you where you present your project to the class, basically. And then one thing that's new this year, which we're doing online, is we'll be doing these kind of group activities. So in many classes, we will have like a short exercise. So for example, we introduce something like, here's how you iterate over a list in Python. And then there will be like an exercise. Here's like 3 different things that you can do with a list. And then we'll take breakout rooms and you can work together on solving that problem. And after class, you can submit your solution that you did together, and you get like up to 1% per submission. And so we will do these like 10 or 12 times or maybe 15 times, but you only have to submit 5 of them. But this is kind of like encouraged to kind of like get people to participate. And even if you already have submitted your 5 activities, we still encourage you to keep participating in them, because they're in-class exercises. You'll be working with teammates. People in the past, when we did this last semester in my data visualization class, really liked this because they also felt like this was the way to get to know people in the class. So we definitely like, this is the way, this is why we're doing this. And I think it's also like valuable to kind of practice some of the skills. So I talked about most of this already. So this is typically a coding problem. The way we suggest you do this is that one person in your breakout room shares a screen, and then everybody just tells them, here's what you should write in code, right? So you kind of like do pair programming basically for these little activities. And then you can share a solution with everyone. And these are graded really in a binary way, right? You submit it and we see that you put in effort and you like did an honest try, then you get the point. If you don't submit it, you don't get the point. So we're not going to say, oh, there's something wrong, or you only get 0.7 points or something like that. The only restriction is this is meant to be real in-class activity, so you have to submit it the same day by 6 p.m. Okay, schedule-wise, we will always be lecturing Tuesday, Thursday at this time, online via Zoom. We have a Google Calendar, so if you're using a Google Calendar, you can just like subscribe to that calendar, and you see all of the events. You like should like you're gonna be on your computer, but you should have also Python and Jupyter Notebooks and so on installed. So like homework 0, which is like not graded, it's just like a setup and survey. You should complete homework 0 before Thursday, because we will have an activity on Thursday, and there you will need to have this environment set up. And if you have any issues with setting it up, you can like, of course, post to our Slack team. There's 2 textbooks we recommend that you read. We will not be, sometimes we have mandatory readings. Most of the time we only have recommended readings in this class. There's this Python for data analysis and hands-on machine learning with scikit-learn and TensorFlow. Both of those are available for free on campus. If you're not on campus, which many of you are probably not, remember that you can VPN into campus, or you can probably access this via the library in some way. So you don't have to buy those books. You can read them online via the links. They're also linked from the website. We will be programming in Python, because Python and R are kind of the 2 main languages that people use for data science. We'll be doing Python in this class, and we'll be using many of Python compatible or Python libraries. Things like scikit-learn will be our main machine learning library. We'll use pandas for data wrangling and data storing. We'll use NumPy for some data wrangling pieces. And then eventually later, we'll be using some TensorFlow if we look at deep learning and neural networks. So some of you may like, I'm assuming like this course is very kind of like, there's a very diverse audience in terms of academic backgrounds. And so the formal prerequisites here are, you should have some programming experience, right? Like this is not the class to teach you programming from scratch. So if you don't know what a function is, or a for loop or something like that, this is going to be a really, really tough class. We will be introducing Python from scratch, so you don't need to know Python. And we will be introducing functions and things like that very briefly in 1 or 2 lectures, but this is going to go way too fast if you don't have programming experience. And then we have a Calculus 1 requirement. There's like all of these different classes that count. We kind of also expect you to learn new software and tools, and this can be something time consuming. So you just have to plan it a little bit for that. Some homework might not be quite as fast as you expect it to be, for example. And you also need to learn some of the skills yourself. So sometimes like you need to read documentation about software packages, especially if you look in, if you do your project and so on. But if you're worried about whether this is a good class for you, just ask either Anna or me or both of us to kind of like help you make this judgment call. The syllabus also lists a code of conduct. And so I really, this is something we both care a lot about. We really want to provide an inclusive and harassment-free environment in all interactions, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, race, or religion. We will not tolerate harassment in any form. And if you experience harassment, either report it to us or to the appropriate university office. And there's the Save You link there where you can do that. And the syllabus has more information on this. And it also links to the official student code of conduct from the university. One very unpleasant topic is cheating. And I want to be very clear. We have very strict rules about cheating and what is like academic misconduct. This is a problem in all classes that where you submit programming assignments. So our policy here is you're welcome to discuss the course ideas, material, and homework with others in order to better understand it. But the work you turn in must be your own. Or for the project, of course, your team's. For example, you must write your own code, design your own visualizations, and critically evaluate the results in your own words. One guideline is every time you paste something into a homework, like from another source, be it Stack Overflow or any of the like websites that you find online, or from any of your friends, you're doing something wrong. it's okay to discuss like how did you solve this with somebody else, but it's never okay to paste anything into your solution or to even start with somebody else's file. So that's kind of really the hard line. You may not submit the same or similar work that you have submitted or will submit to another. You may not make available solution or homeworks to other people in this class or that might take the class in the future. This we treat this just the same. If you share your homework, we treat this just the same as if you take the homework and copy. There's like a School of Computing academic misconduct policy that I want you to review. You will fail the class if we catch you cheating. And we will also report this misconduct to your home department, and your home department might have specific procedures. For example, if we catch you cheating in 2 classes in the CS department, you're barred from ever taking a CS class again, and you're removed from any degree program that you're in. So these are pretty severe consequences. So just be sure, like we really want you to work together, but you cannot copy ever. You can ask questions, you can discuss, but never copy. And also note there is like very good tools to automatically check for plagiarism in your submissions. And these, like changing a variable name is not fooling these tools. Like there's online tools that we use to automatically check for plagiarism. So just simply don't do it. It's also not like you're learning something by doing the things you're on your own. Yeah, just make sure to review the syllabus for all of these issues, late policies. We also have a regrading policy if you disagree with any of our grades. We have a policy for diversity. We have the ADA, sexual misconduct, and also inform us if your student name and personal pronoun, like if you want us to take any special care about this. So quick outline this week. Remember to do homework 0, which has like a short course survey. You need to do this before Thursday, especially the whole installing Python. And then on Thursday, we'll get started with programming in Python. There's 2 readings for this week, the 50 Years of Data Science and the first chapter of the Kathy O'Neill and Rachel Should doing data science book, which is also linked from the schedule. And homework 0, as I mentioned, is really like just an introduction, a survey, and installing everything to get you ready. And there's some links to a Python course if you want to. And yeah, we'll be using GitHub, as I already mentioned. It's this web-based hosting service for version control based on the Git software. We'll be discuss Git and GitHub in a later lecture. But if you just want to copy this, if you want to copy this command and run it in your command line interface, you can get a copy of the homework repository. Next week, we'll be talking about data structures and the pandas library, and we'll do like an introduction to descriptive statistics, and we'll have the first homework due Friday next week. So this is a fairly big class this time around. We have currently, this is, yes, there's different numbers that I get from Canvas versus CIS and so on, but we have about 110 students enrolled. Math and comp roughly split. If you're in this lecture and they're not yet enrolled, just send us an email. We can help you with that. We can point you to the right way to get a permission code or anything like that. But it's a big class, so please be also mindful of if it takes us a little bit longer to grade. We have like limited resources, of course, but we'll be doing our best to keep everything on time and make it a good experience for everyone. Okay, so this is the end. I want to like take 3 minutes or 4 minutes to see whether there are any questions. And after that, I want to start off a breakout room and just randomly assign people here into breakout rooms of 3 or 4 people. I would love to get to know each of you personally, but it's not going to work with like 110 students. And so just take those like 5 minutes and say hi to like 3 random classmates, tell them a little bit about yourself. And then here's some questions that you could ask. Is your first year? Are you an undergrad? Are you a grad student? What is your area? What do you know about data science, Python, R, or anything like that? But before I start the breakout rooms, I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Anna is too.
So I actually did have a question about the Jupyter notebooks. I use Visual Studio Code, and they have extensions for Jupyter. I was wondering if that would be an option for me to go through there.
Yeah, you can do that. You just have to make sure that you can like load and extract a Jupyter notebook, a vanilla Jupyter notebook from there.
Okay, yeah. All right. Thank you.
So I'm taking this class, Math 4100, as like an allied course. I'm a math major, so this is one of the allied course options. And, you know, I thought from reading the prerequisites on the catalog that I had the prerequisites necessary to take this course. But now after reading the syllabus, it says that maybe this course might not be for you if you have no programming background. So like I have zero programming background at all. So I'm trying to think, like, is this not the right course for me? Should I drop this and take it later once I take like CS 1010 or CS 1020?
That would be my recommendation generally. It depends, of course. Like if you have a ton of time and you are very committed to this course, you might be able to do it. But it's definitely not the recommended way. So we do recommend that you take like Comp 1010 or CS 1040 or something like that, or any other kind of programming class that is offered by any of the other departments first, so that you'll have a much more pleasant experience if you have a bit of programming background.
Okay, which one specifically would you recommend I take first if I like have no like zero programming knowledge, like Comp or CS 1010?
The CS, there's CS is a like little bit of a, let's say, longer series. It depends on how. Maybe this is a discussion we can have one-on-one or via email. I don't think we have to have the whole class for that. But essentially, if you're like, if you not want to take CS major, or if you don't want to be a CS major, maybe the Comp sequence, the Comp 1010, Comp 1020 might be a good introduction.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more thing, and on that note, I've had a Comp 1010. Would you say just one of those would be fine?
We don't use any super advanced programming concepts, right? In this class, we don't use any functional programming. We use very little object-oriented programming. Okay. So as long as you're comfortable with things like data structures, like lists and sets and functions and loading files and this kind of stuff, okay. That should be okay. Of course, the more you know, the easier it's going to be.
Obviously. Okay. Thank you.
I see a question. Yes, the lectures will be recorded. They're actually live streamed to YouTube, and then they're archived on YouTube. Okay, so I'll start the breakout rooms now. And then you can just sign off afterwards. We won't have like a joint session afterwards. So thank you all for coming to the first lecture, and we're excited for this semester. And we look forward to get started with Python on Thursday.
Very nice meeting everyone, and enjoy the breakout rooms.
Okay, here we go.